Shalom. Shalom. Good. All right, Shalom. Shalom. I would like to begin this lesson as always by giving all praises, honor, and glory to our power, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak, double honors to the apostles. Salakia. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught us all this truth in the spirit of power of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. I'm Shaquat from the GMS Dallas branch. Back here with another lesson. Lord willing is edifying to the hopeful elect. Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai Barakatham. To you sincere Akyam Wakwathyum. And a sincere shalom to you brothers that are out here pushing this truth out there on the highways and the byways and through the YouTube lessons. Man, shalom to you all. Lord willing this lesson be edifying and exhorting to the elect. So we back here with the Daniel 7. This is part 2. We'll see if we can get through this part by getting through the whole chapter. We'll see, but we're just going to go to where we left off at. So over here in this Daniel 7, we were at verse 6, going into the Grecian Empire. Now, we did already explain what the leopard was, and I'll give you a brief explanation without going to the precepts for it, because I went into all of that in the first part. So you could just go to the first part. But this leopard is going into the Grecian Empire, and to be exact, it's talking about Alexander the Great. All right, now we went into Daniel 8 briefly, and we went into the first Maccabees to go into that type of stuff, right? So, so you go watch the first part where I explain that more in depth. So we'll read here, then we're gonna start here. This is where I left off at with the 4 wings of a fowl. So Daniel 7:6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. All right. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Now, these 4 heads, as I was explaining in the last video, this is going into those 4. Well, there were more generals, but that was going into Alexander's 4 top generals, his top ones, the tip of the mountain. Because he had many generals that also did have, some type of dominion. This is going into his top 4, which was Ptolemy, Cassander, Lysimaeus, and Seleucus. All right, so those are the 4. And to show you, let's go over here to the Maccabees, because it actually gets into it in this chapter. So, what does that last verse say? Yep. So we left off from here. So we're gonna start here. It's First Maccabees 1:6. Wherefore he called his servants, talking about those 4 top generals, such as were honorable and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So when you go back over here, let's slide this. All right. When you go back over here, it says, the beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. This is what it's going into. All right. He called those 4 top generals. All right. And he parted his kingdom among them. All right. He gave each of them a plot. And you go look into the history, you'll find out about that, but I'm not going to go into all of that. So it says, so Alexander reigned 12 years and then died. All right. Then it says, and his servants bear rule, everyone in his place. So that's what it's going into in that Daniel 7. And it says, and after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. Right. Go back over here. Dominion, right? Meaning rulership. So they all put crowns upon themselves, so that their sons after them, many years and evils were multiplied in the earth. All right. Slocking. So yeah, that's when evil started spreading more and more. Esau, man. Esau started being Esau ultimately. And then you get down the line and you got this guy, Antiochus Epiphanes, which is what that Daniel 8 is going into when you go down here to the to that little horn. It's going into Antiochus Epiphanes. But anyway, let's see. See what I want to do here. I don't think I need nothing else out here right now, though. Yeah, we ain't got to come back to this till we hit that Daniel 8. You know, I'm gonna break that down too, Lord willing. Yeah, yep. So, just to show you that. Coming back over here, let's get this Daniel 7:7. And after this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible. Now, this fourth beast is talking about the ancient Roman Empire. And if you don't know, we are in the revived version of the fourth beast. So we are in the revived Roman Empire, if you did not know. Salakia. If you, scriptures that prove that is scriptures below this actually prove it, but we're going to get into that. But you got Revelation, the 13th chapter, early in the chapter, as well as around verse 11 to 12. It goes into that deadly wound being healed. All right, so it's going into the Renaissance era, and certain other precepts, right, showing that we're in a revived fourth beast. So anyway, this is going into the ancient Roman Empire. Dreadful and terrible. Which it was so funny about it when you go to Daniel 2, it actually, because they know, these scholars know, so they actually put it in here. Let's call it shit. Oh. Nothing made me put a cover on. Shit. Goes to bed. All right. I was chilling before this. Satan got to get active. So, okay, you just doing your job. So you see right here, Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, and then Rome. See? So, just to give you a slight example. Back here in that verse 7. So, and after this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible. Why were they dreadful and terrible? Well, and strong exceedingly. Why? Well, let's keep going. And it had great iron teeth. All right. So this great iron teeth is going into their weaponry. All right. They had great. What made the Roman Empire so strong is their use of iron. All right. That's what made them so strong. They used iron, and then you do some research on iron. That's the strongest metal. All right, that is the strongest metal, or was the strongest metal at that time. At that time at least. That's what made them so strong. Everybody else is using bronze and shit like that. That's a very weak metal, a feeble metal. You understand? So that's what that's going into, their weaponry. And they were dreadful and terrible, strong exceedingly. Now what also made them so strong outside of their weaponry? Because the Greeks were stronger than the Medo-Persians, right? But Esau, he became stronger than all these other heathen rules, in the Grecian Empire and especially in the Roman empires, because his blessing was the sword. When you go to Genesis 27. So that had a part in it too. That played a part as well. And then also you got to take into account not just that he was blessed with the sword, not just that, they were using iron and things of that sort, but also look at the fact that they took all the different methods, that the other kingdoms used to get reign, to get rulership and dominion. All these different ways they used, all these different prior kingdoms, they took all the knowledge of those kingdoms and put it into one, which made them even stronger also. Right? Like, for example, Esau, he dibble dabbles in a lot of what the Canaanites do, because, all this witchcraft, they get that shit from the Canaanites and the Egyptians. All right? They get that shit from them, especially the Canaanites. That whole right now, what's their NWO? Their hope is to bring the whole world together as one, where they have a one world government, one world religion. Well, when you think about that, where does that go back to in the scriptures? The Tower of Babel. Who was ruling the tower, during that time? The Canaanites. They ran that shit. Right? They ran the Tower of Babel. You understand? So when you get into all that, they just going back to that Canaanite shit. A lot of the things they learned is from the Canaanites. They learned some things from the Ishmaelites too, and etc. And they learned a little bit of everything from everybody. All right, they learned how to wash their ass from us and be civilized from us. But anyway, I'm being funny. But nonetheless, they took all those different things and they put it into one. You look around, it's a bunch of pyramids. Where they get that from? The ancient Egyptians. You know, they got Ishmaelite shit going on over here, Elamite shit, Moabite shit, Ammonite shit going on, all these different things. And they're taking these things and pushing it into one. All right, which also made them strong. And it says it devoured and break in pieces because they were very strong. They conquered a lot of land. Ultimately, they conquered a lot. You know, it was. I said it last week in that second Ezra's 11 lesson. All right, it was Greek Hellenization because it was called the Greco-Roman Empire. It's the same people essentially. All right, and a lot of the things that the places that was technically Grecian land, you know, the Romans took over, but it was theirs anyway. They're the same people. But it says it devoured and break in pieces. Oh, what was I gonna say? Oh, that's what I was gonna say. It was like Greek Hellenization on steroids. All right, it was like Greek Hellenization on steroids. You understand? And when you look into that word Hellenization, let's go into that. Hellenization was the spread of an adoption of Greek culture, language, religion, and identity by non-Greek peoples, especially following Alexander the Great's conquest. All right. Let's look up another one. Hellenized. Made Greek a Hellenistic and form a character. It used to say when you look at the Hellenization definition, it used to actually explain how it was basically the forcing of. Because when you go into the definition now, it basically makes it seem like people just did this willy nilly, which a lot did, but they try to act like it wasn't forced. Let me see. So they said it wasn't forced, but it was forced. All right, they playing, but you get the point. All right, people converted into this Greekish fashions at the end of the day, and the Maccabees gets into all that. The Maccabees goes into that Greek history, which is why it's needed. You should read that, all 31 books, because like I always say, what confuses these Christians when they get into the New Testament, it says Greek and all that stuff. See, that's everybody. No, that's not talking about everybody, because the Maccabees gets into how Israelites were forced into Greekish fashions. And then you even had Israelite sellouts, especially Jason in the second Maccabees 4, and it even spoke about some sellouts in the first chapter of First Maccabees. So, trying to tell our people, just come be Greek, you know what I'm saying? So just being converted to the Greekish fashion, that's where you get that Phoenician woman out of Matthew, the 24th chapter. That goes into it in Luke as well, I believe, maybe even Mark, but that's where they actually say Phoenician. But that word Phoenician is the Greek way to say Canaanite. All right, but that woman really wasn't a Canaanite woman. She was an Israelite, or Yahweh Shai wouldn't have healed her daughter. You understand? But anyway, no, that means she was a heathen. Well, why didn't Yahweh Shai fuck with Herod? Herod pulled up this, Yahweh Shai looked at that nigga like he stole something. So, yeah. What was I gonna go to? Yeah, devoured and break in pieces. So I explained that and stamped the residue with the feet of it. Like I said, Greek Hellenization on steroids. ultimately. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. All right, so it was diverse. And it had 10 horns. Now those 10 horns are going into what? All right. That's going into the I always forget when I'm about to say it. Damn it, I always forget that word. Salakia. Let me bear with me while I try to pull it from the brain. My brain is overloaded. I'm gonna try to pull it though. Let's see. Lord willing. It's something states. Damn it. I don't remember. But look it up. I always forget that word. Just bear with me. I gotta get that word. Something states. It's something states. I always fucking forget that word, bro. God damn it. Let me see if I can find it. As I want to say it anyway. Where the fuck is that thing at? I got it. I should have it here in my notes because I always forget that word, so I got it in the notes. Let me see if I can find it. And if I can't, we just gonna have to move on. It's okay. It's not that important. It keeps saying associated states, but that's not what it's called. Whatever. Like I said, not that important. But that's going into I can't fucking find it. I see it's 3 people on here though. If you know what it is, go and just put it in the comments. But that's the 10 horns are basically all right. The other allied, you know, countries, essentially, which were also Edomites, but the other allied countries who weren't completely sovereign to the Roman Empire, but they were in like manner. They were allies of them. They were partners. You understand? I just can't think of what it's called. It's something states. Can't fucking think of it for some reason. I tried to pull it from the brain, but that shit ain't no luck in this weak ass body. So it's whatever. But that's what it's going into. And in today's time, the Ten Horns are going into the EU. All right, it's going into the EU in today's times. But at that time, that's what it was going into. But anyway, it says, now let's get back up here. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. Now, there were a few things that made it diverse, but one of the main things that made this place diverse from all the other beasts is because it didn't run off of nepotism. When I say nepotism, where like you got this king and then his son rules, then his son rules, then his son rules. It's not like that, right? Basically, the decisions weren't made by the king himself. It was made by the Senate, meaning a governing body, which were behind the scenes that made decisions, right? And that's what it goes into, where it wasn't just that king made all the decisions. No, it was a governing body, you know. So a top council, when you go into that word Senate, ultimately it gets into a lot of things. One of the things I believe is the highest form or highest state of council, pretty much. And I was going to say something. It got to a point during the Roman Empire where there were, emperors that were ruling, because they were trying to keep it from it being like an emperor, but where it was emperors ruling, and then his sons ruled. And you get into that when you go to Second Ezra 11 and Second Ezra 12, But it was a period of time. But when they got to that point, that's when Rome started to go on a decline, right? But before then, it was run by the Senate, and we're going to show you that. We'll go to chapter 8 in First Maccabees. Let's get this first. First Maccabees 8:1. Now Judas had heard of the fame of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joint themselves unto them, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them. All right. So what's that going into? Oh, where it go? Boom, 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 boom. Right here. All right. I just can't think of what those states are called. That's what's pissing me off. But if a brother Iraq was watching, I know he'd be able to tell me. He told me the last time. I forgot. I always forget the name. Fuck. I hate that. We need new bodies. But anyway, let's go down here though to get to the point that I was trying to get to. Yeah, we start at verse 10. So First Maccabees 8 and 10, and that they having knowledge thereof sent against them a certain captain, and fighting with them slew many of them, and carried away captives their wives, their children, and spoiled them, and took possession of their lands, and pulled down their strongholds, and brought them to their servants unto this day. It was told him besides how they destroyed and brought under their dominion all other kingdoms and isles that at any time resisted them. And then you go over here to that Daniel 7, right? Had great iron, dreadful, terrible, strong, and silly, had great iron teeth, divide and break in pieces, stamped the residue of the feet of it. There you go. Right? It's getting into all of that. And it says, but with their friends, which was those allied countries, that they're called something states. I still just wish I knew the word. Big of a shift tomorrow like us. Anyway, deal with that later. But with their friends, as such as relied upon them, they kept them, or it's like they kept amity, and that they had conquered kingdoms, both far and nigh, insomuch as all that heard her name were afraid of them, because they were great and dreadful and terrible, right? And it says also that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and also Slakia, and whom again they displace. Finally, that they were greatly exalted. And that's going to get to the point. Yet for all this, none of them wore a crown, or so there were no kings. But eventually, like I said, down the line, that became a thing, and that's when Rome began to fall. Because they started doing that. That's what started Pax Romana, which was the glory days. That was the glory. That was the golden age of Rome. But that essentially started the decline of Rome, also. And then it says, or was clothed in purple to be magnified thereby, which the color purple represents royalty. All right, so it wasn't none of that nepotism, none of that you ruled and your son rules. There wasn't none of that royal guard. That royal family shit. Because you did have like a technically some extent a royal guard, which is it was called the Praetorian Guard. But even then they weren't all for the governing and all for the protecting of the king or the emperor at that time, president, whatever you want to call it, because there were times where they would turn on the emperor and kill him if he was just trying to, heap all power to himself. So, and then, the Praetorian Guard today would technically just be the military. But if you want to be even more specific, the what they call them, secret agents or whatever, secret service. But anyway, it says, so I'm gonna read that again. Yet for all this, none of them wore a crown or was clothed in purple to be magnified thereby. Moreover, how they had made for themselves a senate house, wherein 320 men sat in council daily, consulting a way for the people, to the end they might be well ordered. And they committed their government to one man every year, who ruled over all their country, and that all were obedient to that one, and that there was neither envy nor emulation amongst them. So, kind of like voting one in, voting a president in for a said term, and then, all right, now you can move around. All right. So there you go. That's what that's all getting into, though. All right, just to show you, prove what made them diverse from all the other beasts. You understand? Now it says, when you go down here, it says in verse 8, so now we know this, right? I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. And like I said, technically this 10 horns is going into, like I said, today's time, we would just call it the EU, which is Europe. But at that time, it's basically the same shit, Europe. It was just Europe, which are European, the European area, which was run, by Edomites at that time. Right, same thing, So out of those Europeans, so-called, which are all just Edomites, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. Now, who is that little horn talking about? It's talking about America. America came out of that, out of the Europeans, allegedly, right? But that's talking about America, right? So America became what? An extension of the Roman Empire. But America itself is not the revived Roman Empire, but it's the chief of the revived Roman Empire. You understand? You have that beast, and then you have that whore that sits on the back of the beast. America is the whore that sits on the back of the beast. All right, so she's essentially controlling the beast. So she's the face of the beast. You understand? Let's go to that Daniel 2 real quick, just to show you how it's an extension of the Roman Empire. When you go here to Daniel 2, yeah, you got Rome right here. So let's jump down. Well, let's see. We'll start from 40. Daniel 2 and 40. And the kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. See, the kingdom going to be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Now the toes is where we're at now. That's America. We're in the toes of this part of this statue. So that's just an extension of the Roman Empire. We're in the toes. You had the feet. Now you got the toes. We're in the toes. All right, that's America. It's partly strong, but it's going to be partly broken. I mean, it's going to be destroyed ultimately. All right. And when you go here and look up the statue, just look that up really quickly. The Daniel. See, they got Babylon, right? Medo-Persia, Greece, all right? Then Rome, and the feet of iron and clay. And we're in the toes. All right, so in the toes. Now it says Papal Rome and modern nations of Europe, but it's America. It's America. The toes are America, and the feet and the toes are America in the NATO and the EU, which America is technically a part of NATO, but it's the NATO and the EU. But the toes specifically is America. You understand? So there you go. Just to give you a little visual of this Daniel 2. So there you go. We can just go back to that Daniel 7, I guess. Let's go back here. So that little horn right here in verse 8 is going into America. And it says, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. All right, because essentially America, all right, America came out of 3 of those European nations, right? Now, the 3 European nations that this is talking about, 3 of the first horns were plucked up. These 3 European nations is talking about the Britons, or you could say the Brits, the Spaniards, those conquistadors, and the French. All right, so America essentially came out of those 3, essentially, right? So that's what it's talking about, because those 3 were the ones that came over here and started conquering shit. In the Renaissance era, you have what's that nigga name? Cristobal Colon, which is people say Christopher Columbus, but his real name was Cristobal Colon, which was a conquistador, a Spaniard, who came over here. And now you got a bunch of Hispanics, which means, literally his Spanish. He belongs to the Spaniards, which are the Latin tribes. Then you have the French, which are also Edomites, of course. All these are Edomites. Came over here and they took over too. They conquered shit. And that's why you have, the Haitians, they speak what? Creole, which Creole is just a broken language. It's a broken version of the French language, and the reason it's Creole because they spoke French because they were conquered by them, but they had to change the language up when they were rebelling against them, when they were rebelling against them, so they couldn't understand what they were saying. So Creole is a broken down version of French. a slangish version of French. And then you got the Brits. The Brits came over and did what? They fucked with the Benjamites, and they also came over to America and was, fucking with the natives and things of that sort as well. But I brought up the what you call it, the Benjamites, which are the so-called Jamaicans or so-called West Indians, because they speak what? Patois. Patois is just a broken English, because the Brits were speaking English technically. It's just a broken English. You understand? So that's why. But anyway, America essentially came out of those three. So that's what the three of the first horns plucked up by the roots is talking about. And it says, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. You understand? So there you go. Eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. And that's what this devil does. Psalm 55 and 21. He's very cunning. He's a dragon. He seems good. He speaks great things, but evil is in his heart. That's what this devil do. He always speaking great things, allegedly. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this great. That's what it's going all into. It ain't much to that part. And then you go down, and it says the Ancient of Days reigns. Now, who knows what the Ancient of Days is? If you don't know, it's going into Yahweh. Right? Yahweh is the Ancient of Days. But anyway, it says Daniel 7:9, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. That's Yahweh, whose garment was white as snow, going into his purity, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. So a lot of people, when you read Revelation, the first chapter, see it says Jesus' hair is like white like wool. But now it's saying his pop's hair is like the pure wool. So nigga, it's wool, like we said, nigga. Woolly hair. Who's the only nation of people on earth with woolly hair? Israelites. So so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Because their hair is typically straight now, but at the time it was like ours. But it's straight because Esau done dabbled with them pretty much. Essentially, though, we're the only people with that kind of hair. You understand? So it shows you what he looks like. And when you go to Revelation, the 4th chapter, it goes into what the Most High looks like also. It explains it even further. Saying he looks like, like a jasper stone and a sardine stone. When you look into what that is, that's a ruddy brown. All right? It's brown. So anyway, it says, with a head like the pure wool, onto his, his hair, his throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. All right? It's kind of what John the Revelator saw in Revelation, the 4th chapter, when you read that, because he saw the throne. His eyes were opened up to the spirit realm. So he saw it. He saw Yahweh sitting on the throne in the spirit realm. And he kind of explained it similarly. And it says, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him. Now, who is that going into? The angels. In Revelation 4, it also explains how there were many angels ministering unto him, praising him, worshiping him day and night. That's what it's going into, the angels of heaven, because we're all angels, essentially. Because angel just means messenger, but these are going into the angels of heaven, And it says, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were open. What's the judgment? The judgment is that essentially and eventually this first earth age of the heathen's rulership, case in point, will come to an end. And what will happen? The divine kingdom, the forever kingdom, will be set up and established and never fall. Right? So that's what the judgment is. The judgment was set. All right. And the books were open. Now, the Lord did say, tell Daniel in Daniel 12, close up the books, seal the books until the time of the end, and then, many shall go to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. We're in that time now where the books are open. You understand? So I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, talking about America. That horn is America speaking great words. What is because America is spearheading all this. What are the great words that America is speaking? Technocracy. We're gonna make this a technocratic society. All right, everybody, it's gonna be the phone. You're not gonna need your phone no more. And the whole world is talking about this essentially because these are the plans of the elites to make this a worldwide thing. But America wants, America is the face of it. So that's what's speaking technically. And they're speaking a bunch of things, a lot of things. We're never gonna fall. We're gonna rule. We're gonna go in there and conquer Greenland. All right, we're gonna go over there to the Strait of Hormuz, and we're gonna take control of the Strait of Hormuz. We're gonna get Iran in check, and we're gonna take control of the Strait of Hormuz. Nobody's gonna have ownership over the Strait of Hormuz, but we're gonna control it. Nobody's gonna have ownership, and then never gonna be closed again. And yeah, there you go. We're gonna pass this bill. We're gonna pass that bill. I'm just talking shit. It's too many. Like I said, my brain working a little slow right now, so I'm trying to just pull information. I know, but point is, man, that is going into America speaking great words. They're the face of the beast. All right, they are the face, and it says, and those great words are going into a multitude of things, but essentially, the pushing forward of this NWO, which is what establishing this beast system, which would be what it would be getting everybody RFID hipped up. That's essentially what it's going into, man. Anyway, and I beheld, everybody being a one world government, one world religion. I beheld even to the beast was slain. All right, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. So I got a question. Was the Roman Empire, how did the Roman Empire fall? Now I'm going to look it up and show you, but how did the Roman Empire fall? It wasn't by fire. They fell by tactical strike. They fell, and when I say tactical strike, it goes into a multitude of things, but they didn't fall by fire. Fire didn't come down out of heaven and destroy the Roman Empire. That's not what the fuck happened. You can still go to Rome today and live there if you wanted to. So that didn't happen. All right. Now, when you look up, the fall of Rome was a gradual collapse of the Western Roman Empire caused by political instability, economic decline, military weakness. You see why I say it was a tactical strike. It's a multitude of things that went into that. And barbarian invasions culminating in 476 CE, which means Christ era, but essentially it just means the coming of our Lord, or you could say, well, CE means Christ era, but typically you will see it say AD, which means Anno Domini, which means the coming or the year of our Lord. All right. And it says political instability. And then it's going to explain all of that. But that's what went into the fall of Rome. And then after that, you had the Dark Ages where Jake was over there ruling Europe. Revelation 20 gets into that. And then, it shows you in Revelation 3, Revelation 20 and 3. Let's just pull it up. I'm talking. Let me just grab it. How about that? I'm not going to read all of that, but I'm going to just show you the points where Revelation 20 gets into this era, this period of time. So Revelation 20 and 3, all right, it says in the, we started one. Revelation 21, and I saw an angel come down from heaven having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. Now, what's the bottomless pit? What's the bottomless pit? The bottomless pit is talking about Europe, all right? That's the bottomless pit. It's talking about over there in Europe. And another reason it's called the bottomless pit is because it was lifeless. All right. They don't, it's hard to grow crops and things of that sort. The land doesn't, yield fruit, essentially. When I say fruit, it doesn't yield things that are good, like herbs, crops, all those different things. It doesn't yield that stuff. Why? Because heathens over there having it in dominion, and over there it's talking about, that's why you got the small hats. They have to get things, ported over to Israel because the land is not yielding no fruit. Why? Because it's essentially the Lord using the land, all right, or I should say the land through the power of the Lord, punishing you devils because you're not supposed to be there, right? So there you go, and should say a little bit something along those lines when you go into this word. On the bottom, I want to see what it say: abyssos or abusos, deep, bottomless, unbounded, immeasurable depth. Let's see. Yeah, receptacle of the dead, because the land is not yielding nothing, so it's lifeless, like I said. So you get the point. So it basically said some of what I said, kind of. So there you go. Now it says, so that's talking about over there in Europe, over there in that side of the world. And it says a great chain. Now that chain represents what? Captivity. So that was brought over what? To end the Western Roman Empire's rule. And essentially the Edomites did go into some form of slavery. It wasn't hardcore, but they went into a servitude, if that's a word, state, under the Israelites that were ruling at that time over in Europe during the Dark Ages. All right. And a lot went into the caves as well. And it says, and he laid hold on the dragon, which is talking about what? The Roman Empire, the fourth beast. We know this because the dragon is mentioned in Revelation 12. And when you go into it, Revelation 12, that dragon links to Matthew, the 2nd chapter, concerning Herod, all right, which is a ruler in Rome. And Herod was seeking to put Yahushua to death, so prophecy didn't come to pass. And if your spirit can receive it, Herod was an Amalekite. That's why he was doing all that, which is a small hat today. And it says that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, which shows you who rules the dragon, the Edomites. So that shows you that Edom, was the serpent in the garden. If your spirit can receive that also, it shows you that old serpent is going back to the garden. It shows you who that is. It shows you that that's Esau, and it shows you Esau is the sons of the wicked. Case in point, proof is right here. The proof is in the pudding, which is the devil and Satan. Devil is the deceiver, slanderer, accuser, and Satan means the adversary. All right. And everything about this person is adversary to the Heavenly Father. All right, so like it's adverse to the Heavenly Father. 2 Thessalonians 2 said he opposeth everything that is considered righteous. All right, that is considered holy. He opposes it. All right. When you go back in the garden, he was opposed to what the Heavenly Father had told Adam and Eve to do. All right. When you go back to when he reincarnated as Cain, right? Cain was opposed to what the Lord wanted him to do. The Lord said, give him a righteous sacrifice. Abel did it correctly, but then Cain brought fruit. That's not a righteous sacrifice. He's opposed to everything holy. Get to Esau, opposed, same thing. I ain't got to explain that. So there you go. Now it says, and bound him 1,000 years. Now that's going into the Dark Ages, right? Because the Renaissance era didn't, come into be until in 400 AD is 476 AD is just when Western Rome officially completely fell. But they was through a couple hundred years before that. So you could say the Dark Ages even started a couple hundred years before that, because they was through a couple hundred years before that. They were just on their last leg, still standing barely. All right. Because the Renaissance era started in the time period of 1200 AD to 1400 AD. All right. So anyway, it says, and bound him 1,000 years. It's talking about the Dark Ages. So put him into subjection for a period of time and cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more. It's not talking about a spirit. You can't cast the spirit in prison. It's not possible. The Lord didn't allow it to be possible. Now, can the Lord do it? Yes, but still, that's not how he created things to be. It's a lot of people try to make the excuse when you say the Lord, when you say something is wrong, and then they be like, well, you don't think God can do it? We didn't say he couldn't, like the virgin birth, case in point. So you said God couldn't just put a baby in Mary's womb? Nigga, we know he can. He can do anything the fuck he wants. Anything is possible with the Lord. But he didn't. What do you mean? You say he could do it, but he didn't do it because the Lord created something that is called order, all right, which he bound to by his words. So he says in the scriptures that the Lord is bound by his words. So even the Lord is subject to something. His words is himself, essentially. He's not subject to anything above him, but he's subject to himself. He's subject to his words, right? He's subject to his own words. So his words is the order. So he has an order of things that he set, and he's not going to go outside of that. That's the point. So yeah, he can do that, but nigga, he wouldn't. That's the point. So yeah, he can put a spirit in slavery, in a spiritual realm, but nigga, he didn't. He wouldn't do it. You understand? Now it says, and cast them into the bottomless pit. This is talking about over in Europe. So basically put them into subjection under the Israelites, the southern kingdom that was ruling Europe at the time during the Dark Ages. And a lot of Edomites, like I said, went back to the mountains, the caves, and shut him up and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more. Because when Esau is in rulership, he goes and deceives everybody. All right? He goes out and he just gets to deceiving everyone. That's what this devil does. That's how he gets down, right? Hellenization was going on in what? Spreading his philosophies. Colossians 2 and 8, case in point. Right? Revelation 12 and 9. All right, just going out spreading his philosophies. Vain deceits, deceiving. And then eventually he'll be woken up to deceive the nations again. All right, which we're going to get into when we jump down to 7 and 8. So it says, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. So he was taken out of rulership. Philosophy was cast down for 1,000 years. And after that, he must be loosed for a little season for prophecy's sake. All right, because America had to come up to a level. And then it says, right here, this is the Renaissance era. So it goes into, so when it hits verse 4, and goes to verse 6, this is a different period of time if your spirit can receive it. So you got to jump from 3 and then it resumes at 7. All right. 4, 5, and 6 is going into the kingdom. All right. Which has not yet happened, but it's coming. That's the next thing to happen. So down to verse 7. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. That's the Renaissance era. And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, meaning Gog is over there, there's Russia, all right, and Magog just means from there, from Gog, all right, which the ancient Gogites were, those were Japhites, but Esau came and overran that too. But anyway, so you got to be able to discern whether Gog and Magog is talking about Russia, the modern Russians, or the ancient Russians, which were the Japhites. You got to be able to discern between the two, because when it goes into Gog in Ezekiel 38, that's talking about Russia today. It's not talking about the Japhites. Japhites ain't never had no power like that. All right. And it's funny because everything the Japhites own and get power and have dominion over, everything that belongs to them, Esau comes and takes that shit every time. The Japhites were the ancient Greeks. Esau came and took that shit. They were the ancient Romans. Esau came and took that shit. They the ancient Russians. Esau came and took that shit. Boy, they can't get nothing. Said, boy, the closest thing to Israelites is Japhites. That's why I find it funny when people try to say, no, Esau are the Japhites. No, they try to say the so-called white man is the Japhites. Nigga, them niggas is the furthest from the Japhites. Because the Japhites is the closest thing to catching hell there's an Israelite. They done caught the most hell outside of us, because we caught the most. But the nation that caught the second most hell is the Japhites. So ain't no way a so-called white man is a Japhite. Fuck out of here, man. They ain't the Japhites. That's why I said it personally, because the Japhites, they still heathens. They still had a part to play in us going down. But I will have the most mercy on them in the kingdom because them niggas caught more hell outside of us than any other nation. But anyway, it says to gather them together to battle. All right. So there you go, gathering them together to battle. So he went out to deceive the nations again, and all these nations got what? Drunk on Babylon's wine. That's Revelation, the 18th chapter. All right. That's also what? Jeremiah, the 50th chapter, Jeremiah, the 51st chapter, you know, and things of that sort. So, yeah, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, which he did, spread his philosophy again. That's the Renaissance era. All right, you got Job 9:24. All right, the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. There you go. Covered the faces of the judges thereof, if not where, who is he that goes into him spreading his philosophies, his dogma, and changing the images of the Lord and of his people, all right, as well as changing the ways, you know, the ways of the Lord, distorting everything, perverting everything, meaning to distort something from what is natural, from what is right. You understand? So there you go. Now it says, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. All right, now what's that going into? Armageddon or Yahushua. All right, Yahushua, Yahweh's judgment, World War III. And what else? It's going into also Armageddon, like I said, Harmagadwan, which means mountain of troops. All right, meaning troops being brought together. So there you go for war. World War III. That's essentially what that's getting into. So you go back over here. Just give me a moment, Baba Bashar. All right, so that's a long ass chapter. Man. Yeah, I knew it was gonna have to be another part. But we got through the nitty gritty of it, bro. The rest is pretty, straightforward. Where was I at? So basically, that was just to show you Rome didn't go out by fire, blah blah blah, blase blase, right? So it means it was going to be preserved. It had to be brought back up into power, which that did happen. Let's get this also. Let's go back over here to Revelation. Let's go to 13. We read at verse 1. Yeah, we read at 1. All right, it says Revelation 13:1, the beast from the sea. All right, the sea is talking about the Mediterranean Sea. All right, the beast is talking about the fourth beast. All right. And it says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, the 7 heads, if your spirit can receive it, that's going into the NATO. 10 horns is the EU. All right. And this beast is not talking about the, what you call it? Well, it is talking about the ancient Roman Empire, but it's basically going to show you that it's talking about the revived, which is where we're at now. So anyway, it says having 7 heads, 10 horns. I explained that upon his horns, 10 crowns, and upon his heads, the name of blasphemy. It's a blasphemous kingdom. It's complete blasphemy against the Lord. And it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. Now, who is that going into? Going to Alexander the Great. Like I said, leopard back in Daniel 7 and 6. That's what it's going into. Alexander the Great. Because that was the start of the Edomite rule. And then it carried over to the Romans. Now we're in the revived Roman Empire. So that leopard's going into Alexander the Great. That was the beginning of Edomite rule on earth. And it says that his feet were as the feet of a bear. Now, I ask you that question, you may think it's talking about the Medo-Persians because you're like, well, they're the bears. So, no. So then you start thinking like, see, so that means Iran going to be the end of them. No, the bear is talking about the Russians. All right, that's the bear. That's what the bear is talking about. The Russians. The end of as his feet were as the feet of a bear, meaning the end of this empire essentially and eventually will be by the hands of the Russians, because the Russians will lead all these other nations to attack America through thermonuclear fire. That's what it's talking about. So that's when this place is going to go out by fire, right? And it says in his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon, and the lion is what? Very strong and mighty, and it says in the dragon, and what does a mouth do? A mouth consumes things. It speaks great things and it also consumes things. So it will consume you. That's why it says in the book of Peter, forget which one it is, but it says, I think it's 1 Peter 5 and 8. But it says, be sober and vigilant, for your adversary, the devil, talking about Esau, roameth about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. There you go. Devour through what? Also really putting you to death, but what else? Spiritually putting you to death too. By what? His philosophies. There you go. And the dragon gave him his power. All right. The beast gave America his power. This is essentially going to America. So the dragon is the fourth beast, and it gave America its power and his seat and great authority. That's what it's going into. The little horn. Once again, it says, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. All right. So the deadly wound got healed. When you go to Jeremiah, the 51st chapter, it says this wound won't be healed again. This nigga, Babylon the Great, won't be healed. It would be if it were healed, but it won't be healed. Roughly paraphrasing that Jeremiah 51. So this place won't be healed a second time, but it was healed before. But that shit not gonna happen again. You understand? So that goes into what? It was healed. What does that mean? The Renaissance era. It was wounded, Revelation 20 and 3, and it was healed, Revelation 20 and 7. Boom, there you go. And now it says, and they worship the dragon, this beast, where we're at now, the Roman Empire, because we're in a revived of it. So this is still the Roman Empire, which gave power unto the beast. All right. And it says, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? All right. So there you go. It goes to that great power and might of this beast, which is spearheaded by America. All right. Now, hold on. So Slot, getting back to it. Looking beast was able to make war with him, because going to his might, his power, his strength. Let's see. That's why I say partly strong. But anyway, partly broken. let's see. Speaking great things, blasphemies, all this stuff, spreading philosophies, making war with the Israelites. Uh, okay, so yeah, it gets into some good stuff there too, But I ain't come here to break down all the Revelation 13. That could be a different lesson. But now let's jump down here to verse 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb and spake as a dragon. This beast is talking about the revived Roman Empire, and to be more specific, it's talking about America, right? Two horns like a lamb. A lamb is what? A very docile, all right, very lowly creature, a very humble creature. So those two horns is what? Going into the plebeians and patricians, or better known as today, the Democrats and the Republicans. All right. And they act like they sincerely for the people, but they're a dragon. Meaning what? They're cunning, they're deceitful, and they're just really finding that right time to clamp down on their prey. Essentially, that's what that's going into. All right. And it says, he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, so the ancient Roman Empire, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. So shows you the deadly wound got healed, man. All right, the Renaissance era. So it had to be revived again for multiple reasons, but one reason was to fit this prophecy of going out by a burning flame, which is what? The lake of fire, the second death by thermonuclear fire. Now it says, as concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away. All right. Meaning what? These heathens. It's come a period of time after this whole thing debacle happens, where World War III happens, that burning flame going into World War III, body destroyed, beast of slain, that's going into World War III. After this, all right, all the other beasts is going into all the heathens. They had their dominion taken, meaning they had their sovereignty and all that taken away. Meaning what? They went into captivity under who? The Israelites for a period of time. When you go back over here to that Revelation 20, that's what this is getting into. Let's read it. Revelation 20 and 4. And I saw the thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given unto them. All right. And it says, and I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahweh Shai. Who? It means martyrs. It's going into martyrs, meaning people being beheaded for not worship, what I was about to tell you, and for the word of the Most High, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither have received the mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. See, it ain't just the right hand, bitch. All right. So that's what it's going into. It's pretty self-explanatory. And it says, and they lived and reigned with the Mashiach 1,000 years. All right. Now, what's that going into? That don't mean the kingdom only going to last 1,000 years. That means we're going to have these heathens in slavery for 1,000 years. They're going to be in subjection to us forever, but we're going to have them in hardcore slavery for 1,000 years. So when you go back to that Daniel 7, where it says, as concerning the rest of the beast, they had their dominion taken away. That's what that's talking about. Now, go back over here to Revelation 20. It says, but the rest of the dead, which are the heathens, live not again. So they didn't live, meaning they didn't have sovereignty. They weren't in their land until the 1,000 years were finished. All right. This is the first resurrection. All right. So till the 1,000 years were finished, meaning the 1,000 years that we're going to have them in captivity were finished. And then what? They're going to be able to go back, all right, to their lands. And I think it says something like that down here too. No, that's just it right here. There, yeah, that's just it right there. So they live not again, but eventually they will live again, meaning they will be able to go back to their lands after these 1,000 years of captivity. All right. And let me see. Yeah, but anyway, let's read that 6th verse. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. Who will have part in the first resurrection? The elect. All right, and it says, and on such the second death hath no power. Meaning what? The second death won't have no power over us, because if you're of the elect, you're going to avoid the second death. All right, you're gonna avoid thermonuclear fire because you're gonna be beamed up into a so-called UFO. And it says, "But they shall be priests of God and of Hamashiach," showing you it's different. Is that God is really going to Yahweh, and Christ is going to Yahweh Shai. You understand? And we are priests of the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. What does the word priest means? It means an ordained minister. So really, you're an ordained servant of the Lord. All right. And it says, "And shall reign with him 1,000 years." That's just talking about having dominion over the heathens. We're gonna have dominion over them forever, but it's talking about having them in hardcore slavery for the first 1,000 years of the kingdom. But we're gonna rule with them forever. It's gonna be an everlasting kingdom. Daniel 2:44. All right. So there you go. Just to show you that. All right. What it meant right here when it said dominion was taken, yet their lives were prolonged for a season of time. Meaning what? After captivity, they were able to go back to their land. They will, after we had them in slavery for 1,000 years, they're going to be able to go back to their land, but they're still going to be subject to us. It's like it. They're still going to be subject to us no matter what, though. They're going to be subject to us forever. You understand? Forever. Okay? So, how long I've been going? Oh shit. Yeah, I'm gonna end this off right here then. I'm gonna end the lesson off. We're gonna come back and resume again, Salakia. I knew it was gonna be another part. So where did we stop here? So we stopped here. That's perfect. So we're gonna start right here. The Son of Man presented. So we're gonna start going into Yahweh Shai in verse 13. And Lord willing, we'll just be able to finish the chapter out this time. I don't want to do no fourth part. All right. So Lord willing, I'm not taking too long, for those out there watching. But do hope and pray this lesson was edifying to the elect. I would like to close giving all praise, honor, and glory to our power, Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Chakodash, double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who have taught us all this truth in the spirit and the power of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai. And until next time, Abba Ball, Kwame Yashra Lagadol, Labadium, Lababol, Hagadol, Yahweh Mahar, Will Hapathum. And until next time, I would like to say unto you all, Shalom. Just keep on and doing. We almost about this bitch. The Wadi Shai.